Molly's mind was spinning as she climbed the stairs to the apartment above the diner. So many things suddenly made sense. Her mother's bad dreams, her refusal to talk about the war, the way she sometimes stared at the stars through the window with deep sadness in her eyes. The apartment was small and messy with the stuff of a simple life. Pictures hung on the walls showing Molly at different ages. A worn couch faced a screen that was playing some gardening show. The kitchen smelled like coffee and the lavender. Soap her mother had used for as long as Molly could remember. Linda Harper sat in her favorite chair by the window. Her cane leaned against the armrest. She looked up when Molly came in and smiled. "You were done early. I thought you had the morning shift." "I do. Mom, I need to talk to you." Something in Molly's voice made Linda's smile fade. She grabbed the remote and turned off the screen, giving her daughter full attention. "What is wrong?" Molly sat down on the couch. Her hands were clasped between her knees. For a long moment, she did not know how to start. How do you ask your mother if she was secretly a war hero? How do you tell her that 5 dragon soldiers are sitting downstairs waiting to see her after 30 years? "There are some customers downstairs," she finally said. "Draconari, veterans. They have a tattoo that I recognized." Linda went very still. "What tattoo?" Molly reached out and gently pushed up her mother's sleeve. There it was. The mark that had puzzled her since she was a little girl. The snake wrapped around the sword. The 7 stars above it. This one. The silence between them was heavy and fragile. "Molly, they told me about the 7th Fleet, Mom. About the Ashfall campaign. About who you really are." Molly's voice cracked. "Why did you never tell me?" Linda closed her eyes. For a moment, she looked every one of her 52 years. Her shoulders fell under a weight that had been pressing on her for 3 decades. "Because I wanted you to have a normal life." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Because I wanted to be your mother, not some story from a war that should be forgotten. Because every time I look at you, I see the life I chose instead of the one I left behind. I have never regretted that choice. But those people with the tattoo survived because of you. They still wear that mark because of what you meant to them. 253 people died because of me." Linda's eyes opened, and they were bright with tears that would not fall. 253 soldiers who trusted me to bring them home. I gave the orders that sent them to die. I watched them fall one by one, and I kept going because stopping meant their deaths would mean nothing. She reached up and touched the scar on her shoulder. This was not an accident. A Vorax blade went through my shoulder while I was holding the line so my team could finish the mission. I should have died that day. Sometimes I wonder if I did, and everything since has been some kind of dream. Molly moved from the couch to kneel beside her mother's chair. She took Linda's hands in her own, feeling how swollen the joints were, how thin the skin had become. "You are not dreaming, Mom. You are here. You built this life. You raised me. You made something good out of all that pain. That matters. Does it?" Linda's voice was raw. "I left my soldiers behind. The ones who survived, I abandoned them to deal with their own nightmares while I ran away and hid." They did not see it that way. Molly squeezed her mother's hands. "They are downstairs right now, and they are not angry. They want to see you. They have wanted to see you for 30 years. Linda trembled. Her whole body shook with feelings she had kept locked away for decades. "Who is it? Who came?" "Their leader is Commander Korthax. There is also Vexera, Brennick, Torvax, and Selena." A sound escaped Linda that was half laugh and half sob. "Korthax, that stubborn old lizard, is still alive? And Vexera, who refused to leave my side no matter how many times I told her to find cover." She shook her head slowly. "I thought they would have forgotten by now. They wear your mark on their skin. How could they forget?" Linda was quiet for a long time. Her eyes drifted to the window, to the stars visible beyond the glass. Somewhere out there was the planet where the Ashfall campaign had ended in blood and fire. Somewhere out there, the graves of her soldiers lay under alien skies. "I am not the same person I was then," she finally said. "The woman who led the 7th Fleet, who made those impossible choices, she died at Ashfall. What came back was someone else. Someone broken." "You are not broken, Mom." Molly's voice was fierce. "You are the strongest person I know. You raised me by yourself. You built this diner from nothing. You taught me that everyone who walks through our doors deserves kindness, no matter what they look like. That is not broken. That is healing." Linda looked at her daughter, really looked at her, and something changed in her face. The weight on her shoulders seemed to lift, just a little. "When did you become so smart? I had a good teacher." Another long silence. Then Linda took a deep breath and reached for her cane. "Help me up. I guess it would be rude to keep them waiting." Molly helped her mother stand. She held Linda's arm as they walked slowly toward the stairs. Each step seemed to take enormous effort, and Molly realized it was not the bad legs slowing her down. It was 30 years of running away finally catching up to her dot at the top of the stairs. Linda stopped. "Go first. Tell them I am different now. I do not want them to be disappointed." "They will not be disappointed." Molly kissed her mother's cheek. "Trust me." She went down the stairs first and pushed through the door into the diner. The 5 dragons were exactly where she had left them. Their eyes turned toward her with hope and worry mixed together. "She is coming," Molly said. "Just give her a moment. She needs to do this her own way." Corthax nodded. The others rose from their seats and stood at attention like soldiers do when something important is about to happen. Then the door opened again, and Linda Harper stepped through. She looked small. Compared to the huge Draconari, she seemed almost fragile. She leaned on her cane with one hand and held the door frame with the other. Her gray hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore an old dress that had seen better days, but her eyes were the same. Brennick saw it first. "There," he breathed, his metal eye clicking as it focused. "Look at her eyes. The fire is still there." Linda stood frozen in the doorway. Her gaze moved from one face to the next, seeing past the scales and scars to the soldiers she had known 3 decades ago. "Corthax." Her voice was steady despite everything. "You got old." The red dragon made a sound between a laugh and a bark. "And you got small. What happened to the warrior who once stood on a pile of enemy bodies and dared their friends to come fight her?" "She retired." Linda took a slow step forward. She opened a diner and learned to make pancakes. Pancakes are much more satisfying than battles. Vexera moved before anyone could stop her. The black-scaled dragon crossed the room and dropped to one knee before Linda. Her massive head bowed low. "Commander, I never got to thank you properly for the day you pulled me from that burning ship, for every order you gave that kept us alive, for teaching me that courage is not having no fear, but choosing to act even when you are afraid." Linda reached out with a shaking hand and placed it on Vexera's head. "Stand up, old friend. You never needed to kneel to me. You never needed to thank me. We survived together. That was always the point." One by one, the other dragons came forward. Brennick showed her the metal eye that replaced the one he lost at Ashfall. Selena told her about the family she had raised. Torvax just stood in front of her in silence, tears running down his scaled face, until Linda stepped forward and hugged him with surprising strength. Molly watched from behind the counter as her mother became someone else before her eyes. Not the shy, quiet woman who had raised her, but a leader, a commander, a hero who had hidden herself away for 30 years and was now, finally, letting herself be seen again. The Cosmic Bean was a small diner on the edge of Starport 7. It sat between a ship repair shop and a cargo warehouse. Nothing fancy. Just a place where tired workers came to eat breakfast and drink. coffee before their long shifts began. Molly Harper had worked there for 4 years. She was 23 years old, with brown hair that she kept tied back in a ponytail. Her mother, Linda Harper, had started the diner 15 years ago. Now Linda stayed in the apartment upstairs because her legs hurt too much to stand all day. Molly ran everything by herself. It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed. The door opened at 9 o'clock sharp. Molly looked up from the counter where she was cleaning glasses. Her hands stopped moving. 5 dragons walked into her diner. They were not really dragons, of course. They were Draconari, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. But everyone called them dragons because that is what they looked like. They stood over 7 feet tall. Their bodies were covered in thick scales. They had wings folded against their backs and golden eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light of the diner. Molly had seen Draconari before, but never this close. These 5 were different from the traders and merchants who sometimes passed through the starport. These dragons carried themselves like soldiers. Their scales showed old scars. One of them was missing his left eye, replaced by a glowing metal one. Another walked with a limp. The biggest dragon had scales the color of dark red wine. He stepped forward and spoke in a deep voice that rumbled like thunder. "We would like to eat here. Do you serve all species?" Molly noticed that the other customers in the diner had gone very quiet. A few of them were already reaching for their bags, getting ready to leave. She ignored them. "Of course," she said with a smile. "Welcome to the Cosmic Bean. Table for 5? Something flickered in the red dragon's eyes. He seemed surprised that she was not afraid. "Yes, that would be good." Molly grabbed 5 menus and led them to the big corner booth. It was the only table large enough for them. She handed out the menus and pulled out her notepad. "Can I get you something to drink? We have fresh tea that I am told tastes similar to something from your home planet. Or coffee if you want to try human drinks." The dragons looked at each other. A female with black scales spoke next. Her voice was smoother than the leader's, but just as strong. "You are not scared of us?" Molly shrugged. "Should I be? You came in looking for food, not trouble. I have been doing this job long enough to know the difference." The black dragon made a sound that might have been a laugh. "I am Vexera. This is Commander Korthax, our leader. The others are Brennick, Torvax, and Selena." Molly nodded to each of them. "Nice to meet you all. I am Molly, so drinks?" "The tea," Commander Korthax said. "For all of us." Molly went back to the counter to prepare their order. Behind her, she heard the last few human customers hurry out the door. She did not care. Her mother had always taught her that money was money, no matter who was spending it. She made the tea carefully. An old Draconari captain had taught her the right way to make it years ago. When she brought the tray to their table, the dragon with the metal eye leaned forward and sniffed. "This is made correctly," he said. "How does a human know our traditional method?" "We used to have a regular customer from your planet, Captain Varth. He taught me after I served him something he called an insult to his ancestors." The smallest dragon, the one with copper-colored scales named Selena, actually laughed at that. "Varth, I know that name. He fought in the 7th Fleet during the war." Molly took their food orders and went to the kitchen. She was halfway through cooking when she heard loud voices from the dining area. She pushed through the kitchen door. 4 human men stood near the dragon's table. Molly recognized them right away. They were dock workers from the night shift, probably drunk from a long night of drinking. The leader was a man named Carter Pike. He had been banned from the Cosmic Bean twice before for causing trouble. "You should leave," Carter was saying. His words were slurred and angry. "Your kind are not wanted here." Commander Korthax had not moved from his seat. His golden eyes watched Carter the way a cat watches a mouse. "We were invited to sit by the owner," Korthax said calmly. We plan to finish our meal and leave. There is no need for problems. No need for, Carter sputtered. He turned to his friends. You hear that? The lizard thinks he can tell us what to do. Molly had heard enough. Carter. A voice cut through the room like a knife. The drunk man turned, surprised to see her standing there with her arms crossed. You were banned from this diner. Twice. Leave now before I call security. Carter's face turned red. These things killed people I knew in the war. You expect me to just, I expect you to leave my diner, Molly said. She did not raise her voice, but somehow it filled the whole room. Your anger does not give you the right to bother my customers. Get out. For a moment, the situation could have gone either way. Carter's hands curled into fists. His friends shifted behind him. The 5 dragons remained still, but Molly could feel how ready they were to fight if they had to. Then Carter's shoulders dropped. This is not over, he muttered. He led his group out of the diner. The door slammed behind them. Molly let out a breath she did not know she was holding. She turned to the dragons with an apologetic look. I'm sorry about that. Your food will be ready soon. It is on the house today. Commander Korthax stood up slowly. He was even bigger standing, his horned head almost touching the ceiling. That was not necessary. What was not necessary? The offer of free food. We can pay. And stepping in like that was unexpected. Most humans would not have gotten involved. Molly shrugged. My mom would have done the same thing. She always said the cosmic being serves anyone who walks through those doors with respect. Vexra had also stood up. She was studying Molly with new interest. Your mother sounds like a good woman. She is. Molly smiled. She ran this place for 15 years before I took over. Made friends with all kinds of species. She headed back to the kitchen to finish their food. As she cooked, she could feel their eyes on her back. Something had changed in the way they looked at her. There was curiosity there now, and something that might have been respect. She brought out plate after plate of food. They ate with surprising neatness, their clawed hands handling the forks and knives with skill. Molly kept their teacups full and their water glasses topped off. It was Selena who noticed first. The copper-scaled dragon had pushed up her sleeve to reach for the salt. This exposed more of her forearm, and Molly saw something there. A tattoo. A snake wrapped around a sword with 7 stars above it. Molly stopped moving. The teapot shook in her hand. Are you okay? Selena asked, concern in her golden eyes. Molly set the teapot down carefully. Her hands were shaking badly now. That tattoo, she whispered. My mom has one just like it. The diner went completely silent after Molly spoke those words. 5 pairs of golden eyes fixed on her with sudden intensity. Commander Korthax rose from his seat so fast that the whole booth shook. His massive body blocked out the light from the windows behind him. What did you say? His voice was no longer calm. There was something raw and urgent in it now. Molly swallowed hard. My mom. She has a tattoo on her arm. The snake, the sword, the 7 stars. I have seen it my whole life. She never told me what it meant. The dragons looked at each other. Molly could not understand the meaning in their glances, but she knew something important was happening. Vexra had gone very still. Her black scales seemed to drink in the light around her. Tell us about your mother, she said. Everything you can. Why? Molly asked. What is going on? Brennick, the one with the metal eye, leaned forward. The fake eye made a soft clicking sound as it focused on her face. Please. This is important. Something in his voice made Molly decide to trust him. Maybe it was the way Selena had spoken about her mother earlier. Maybe it was how they had stayed calm when Carter Pike was yelling at them. Or maybe it was just her gut telling her these were good people, despite their scary appearance. Her name is Linda Harper. Molly began. She is 52 years old, human. Her hair is gray now, but it used to be dark brown. She walks with a cane because her legs hurt. She has a scar on her left shoulder that she says came from an accident, but it looks like a burn to me. And she has that tattoo. Same place as yours. Same design. Torvax, who had been quiet the whole time, suddenly stood. He was the biggest of the group after Korthax, with scales the color of a dark forest. His voice was surprisingly soft when he spoke. Linda Harper. He said the name like it was something holy. She is alive? Molly took a step back. She was starting to feel scared now. You know my mother? Korthax held up one clawed hand. Molly Harper, I need you to understand something. What I am about to tell you is secret. Very few people know the truth. The results of sharing this information could be serious. Then why tell me? Because if your mother truly wears the mark of the seventh, you are already part of this story. Korthax's golden eyes met hers. You deserve to know the truth. But first, answer me this. Has your mother ever talked about the Ashfall campaign? The name hit Molly like a punch to the stomach. Not because she knew it, but because of how her mother acted whenever the old war was mentioned on the news. The way her eyes went far away. The way her hands became fists. The way she would leave the room and lock herself in her bedroom for an hour. No, Molly said slowly. She never talks about the war. Ever. But sometimes at night she has bad dreams. She screams things in a language I do not know. Vexera made a sound that was half growl, half cry. The old tongue of our empire. She was one of us. That is impossible. My mother is human. Sit down, Molly Harper. Korthax pointed at the booth. This will take time to explain. You should not be standing when you hear it. Against her better judgment, Molly sat. The dragons settled back into their seats around her. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Korthax began. 30 years ago, there was a great war. The Vorax hegemony, a group of species from far away, attacked the Galactic Confederation. The war lasted 7 years. Billions died. Whole planets were destroyed. I know about the war, Molly said. They teach it in school. They teach you a clean version, Brennick said. They do not teach you about what we did when normal fighting stopped working. They do not teach you about the Seventh Fleet. Korthax continued. The Seventh Fleet was different from any other military group in history. It was not organized by species. It was made up of the best fighters from every world. Humans fought beside Draconari. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years learned to trust each other. And my mother was part of this? Your mother did not just join it. Selena's voice was thick with feeling. She led it. Molly felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. That cannot be true. My mother runs a diner. She does paperwork and orders supplies. She cannot even kill bugs without feeling bad. The Linda Harper we knew could kill without stopping when lives depended on it. Vexera's black scales seemed to ripple with old pain. But she never liked it. That is what made her special. She understood the cost of every life she took. That is why we followed her. Torvax pulled a small device from his belt. He set it on the table and pressed a button. A three-dimensional picture appeared in the air above it. It showed a battlefield. Smoke and fire filled the background. Bodies lay everywhere. And in the middle of the picture, standing on a rocky hill with a gun in her hands and blood on her face, was a young woman with dark hair and fierce eyes, Linda Harper. 30 years younger, but clearly her. Behind her stood a group of soldiers. Humans, Draconari, and other species Molly did not recognize. They were hurt and bleeding, but they stood tall and proud. On each of their arms was the mark of the seventh. This was taken at the Battle of Ashfall, Korthax said quietly. The Vorax had almost won. Their ships outnumbered ours 5-1. Everyone thought the war was over. Everyone except Linda, Brennick added. She looked at the maps and saw something nobody else could see. A weakness. A chance. Vexera picked up the story. Her plan was crazy. A small team would sneak deep behind enemy lines and destroy their main control center. This would cause chaos in their fleet. The chance of winning was less than 3%. The chance of surviving was even lower. She asked for volunteers, Torvak said. She would not order anyone to go on a suicide mission. She stood in front of the whole 7th Fleet and explained what she wanted to do. She said anyone could follow her, but nobody would be blamed for staying behind. How many volunteered? Molly asked, though she already knew the answer. Everyone. Korthax's voice carried the weight of 30 years of memories. Every single soldier in the 7th Fleet. We would have followed her into a star. Selena turned off the picture, and the image of young Linda Harper faded away. She only took 300. She said she would not waste more lives than she had to. What happened? We won. Brennick's metal eye glowed. Against all odds, we won. Linda led us through enemy lines like a knife through water. When we reached their control center, she destroyed it herself while fighting off a whole army of Vorik soldiers. The chaos she created gave our main fleet the opening they needed, Korthax continued. The counterattack turned the war around. Within 6 months, the Voriks had surrendered. Molly sat in stunned silence. She could not match the woman they described with the mother who made her soup when she was sick and left little notes in her lunch. If she was such a hero, why does nobody know? Why is she not in the history books? The dragons exchanged uncomfortable looks. Because what happened after, Vexera said softly. Because of the cost. Korthax took a deep breath. Smoke curled from his nose. Of the 300 who went on that mission, only 47 survived. Linda was one of them, but she was changed. The things she saw, the things she had to do. They broke something inside her. She quit right after the war ended, Brennick added. She refused all honors. She asked the government to hide her records and let her disappear. They agreed because they owed her everything. The mark of the 7th was created by the survivors, Selena explained. A private symbol known only to those who served under her. We swore never to tell outsiders about it. But you are not an outsider. Torvak spoke with quiet strength. You are her daughter. You have a right to know who your mother really is. The tears did not last long. Linda Harper had never been one to cry for very long, and 30 years of normal life had not changed that. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and stood up straight despite her aching body. She gave her old soldiers a stern look that made them all stand up straighter without thinking. If you are all going to stand around staring at me like I'm some kind of museum piece, she said. Her voice stronger now. The least you can do is sit down and let me feed you. Molly, are our guests being taken care of? They ordered breakfast an hour ago, Molly said with a small smile. It is probably cold by now. Then make it again. And bring out the good tea from the back cabinet. These old warriors deserve better than our regular stuff. Molly paused. Mom, you should rest. I just spent 30 years resting. Linda moved toward the kitchen with surprising energy, her cane tapping against the floor. If my soldiers are going to visit, I'm going to cook for them myself. The dragons watched her go with looks of wonder and confusion on their faces. She seems different, Vexera said. More alive than when she first came down those stairs. Cooking is how she deals with hard things, Molly explained. When life gets tough, she goes to the kitchen. She says the work keeps her hands busy so her mind can rest. Korthax nodded slowly. She always needed to be doing something. During the war, she would go days without sleep, making plans and studying maps. We had to take turns making her eat. They settled back into the booth, but the feeling in the room had changed completely. The earlier tension had given way to something warmer. Molly made fresh drinks while the veterans talked among themselves, their deep voices filling the diner with memories and laughter. "Do you remember the Battle of Corrick Station?" Brennick asked, his metal eye gleaming. When the commander decided the best way to capture their control room was to walk straight through the front door. "She said the Vorix would never expect something so direct," Torvax replied. She was right. They were so confused by the boldness of it that they just froze. And then she shut down their entire security system with a device she built from junk parts. Selena shook her head. "I still do not understand how that thing worked." "It should not have worked," Vexera added. The science made no sense. But it was Linda, so somehow it did. The stories continued as Molly worked. She found herself listening closely, learning more about her mother in an hour than she had in 23 years. The woman they described was bold where her mother was careful, fierce where her mother was gentle, and brilliant in ways that had nothing to do with running a small diner. But the kindness was the same. The care for her soldiers. The refusal to waste lives. The belief that every species deserved respect. These were things Molly recognized. These were the values her mother had passed down to her. The kitchen door swung open, and Linda came out carrying a tray full of plates. The food was simple but perfectly made. Eggs and meat and thick slices of fresh bread with jam and butter on the side. She set the tray down before her old soldiers and crossed her arms. "Eat. I can hear your stomachs growling from across the room." Corthax looked at the food with clear appreciation. "You remembered that we like our eggs cooked firm." "I remember everything." Linda sat down in a chair across from them, her cane hooked over the armrest. "I remember every battle, every planning session, every meal we shared around fires on strange planets. The memories have not faded, no matter how much I wish they would." "Why did you wish that?" Selena asked gently. "We treasure those memories. They are part of who we are. Because along with the good memories come the bad ones." Linda's voice was quiet. "The faces of everyone I lost. The choices I question in the dark hours of the night. The question that never stops bothering me. Could I have saved more of them if I had been smarter or faster?" "The answer is no." Brennick's tone was firm. "I have studied the Ashfall campaign closely, Commander. I have run computer models, looked at different approaches. There was no plan that could have gotten the same results with fewer deaths. What you did was a miracle. The fact that any of us survived was because of your leadership." "Brennick became a military historian after the war," Vexera explained. "He has written several papers about our campaign, though he changed names and details to protect your identity. One of them is required reading at the Draconari War School," Torvax added. "The next generation of commanders studies your methods without ever knowing whose genius they are learning." Linda took in this information in silence, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea that Molly had quietly placed before her. She stared into the dark liquid as if looking for answers. "What have all of you been doing?" she finally asked. "Since the war, I mean. I want to know what happened to my soldiers." They told her. Corthax had served another 10 years in the military before retiring to teach young officers. Vexera had become a diplomat, using the friendships made during the war to bring species closer together. Brennick's scholarly work had earned him fame in academic circles. Selena had raised a family on the Draconari home world, her children and grandchildren knowing only peace because of what had been won at Ashfall, and Torvax had become a healer. "I saw so much death during the war," he explained, his soft voice filling the diner. "I decided I wanted to spend the rest of my life doing the opposite. I trained as a doctor and opened a clinic for veterans of all species. We treat the wounds that do not show, the ones that live in the mind." Linda's eyes met his. "Trauma. Yes, we have helped thousands of soldiers find their way back from the darkness." He paused. I always wished I could help you, Commander. But I respected your choice to disappear. There were days I wish I had reached out. Linda set down her teacup. Days when the nightmares were so bad I could barely get out of bed. But I had made my choice. I had Molly to raise. I could not afford to fall apart. You could have had both. Torvax's voice was gentle. Healing and being a mother are not opposite things. Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is ask for help. Linda was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to her daughter, who had been listening from behind the counter. Molly, I owe you an apology. For what? For keeping all of this from you. For letting you think I was just an ordinary woman when I was carrying so much weight from the past. You deserve to know who your mother really was. Molly came around the counter and sat down beside Linda. She took her mother's hand in her own. You were exactly who I needed you to be. You taught me courage and kindness and how to treat people with respect. That is your real legacy, Mom. Not the battles you fought, but the person you became after. The person who raised me. Vexra made a sound of approval. Your daughter speaks truth, Commander. The Linda Harper we knew during the war was remarkable. But the Linda Harper who raised a child to show kindness to strangers, to stand up for what is right, to see people instead of species, that person is even more worthy of our respect. The morning had turned into afternoon without anyone noticing. The diner stayed empty of other customers. The close sign had been flipped at some point. The world outside kept moving, but inside the cosmic bean, time had bent into something more meaningful than hours and minutes. Korthax leaned back in his seat, his massive body looking more relaxed than when he first came in. We came to this station for a ceremony, the 30th anniversary of Ashfall. We were going to toast the fallen and share memories. A ceremony? Linda asked. At the memorial on the observation deck. Nothing official. Just those of us who survived gathering to honor those who did not. Korthax's golden eyes fixed on her. We would be honored if you joined us. Linda's face went pale. I have not been to any memorial. Not in 30 years. I could not stand to. You do not have to. Selena interrupted gently. This is an invitation, not an order. We would understand if you stayed here. But we would also understand if you chose to come, Brennick added. Sometimes facing the past is the only way to move past it. Linda looked at the faces around her, at the soldiers who had followed her into almost certain death and came out alive on the other side. Then she looked at her daughter, who was watching her with those same fierce, caring eyes she saw in the mirror every morning. I will come, she said quietly. On one condition. Name it. Molly comes too. Linda squeezed her daughter's hand. She is part of this now. She has a right to see what her mother was, what her mother fought for, what her mother spent 30 years running from. Korthax bowed his massive head. It would be our honor to welcome her. The observation deck sat at the highest point of Starport 7. It was a huge glass dome that showed the stars in every direction. The station turned slowly beneath it, and somewhere in the distance, a cloud of colorful gas painted the darkness in shades of purple and gold. Linda had changed into something nicer. Dark pants, a simple shirt, and a jacket that Molly had never seen before. It was old and faded, but the cut was clearly military. On the shoulder, barely visible, was the ghost of a symbol that had been removed long ago. Your old uniform? Molly asked as they rode the elevator up. What I kept of it. Linda's voice was distant. I threw most of it away after I quit, but I kept the jacket. I do not know why. The elevator doors opened and Molly lost her breath. The observation deck was packed with beings of every species she had ever seen, and some she had not. Humans in regular clothes stood next to Draconari warriors. Strange floating creatures with many arms drifted near the glass walls. Clicking insect-like beings talked quietly with a group of tall, Thin aliens Molly could not name Dot, and every single one of them had the mark of the seventh somewhere on their body. Dot as Linda stepped off the elevator. A wave of awareness moved through the crowd. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Eyes went wide. A human woman in her 60s was the first to react. She crossed the deck quickly and threw her arms around Linda before anyone could stop her. You came. After all these years, you actually came. Lieutenant Daniels. Linda returned the hug. Katie, I thought your ship was destroyed at the station battle. Damaged, not destroyed. We limped home on backup power. Katie Daniels pulled back, tears running down her lined face. I looked for you after the war. We all did. But you had vanished. I needed to disappear. Linda's gaze swept the crowd. How many are here? How many survived? 43 of the original 47 are still alive. Most of them made it today. Katie took Linda's hand and led her into the crowd. Let me introduce you. Some you will remember. Others are soldiers who served under officers you trained. Molly hung back, watching as her mother was surrounded by beings who looked at her like she was something sacred. Every few steps, someone new came forward to hold her hand or hug her or simply bow their head in respect. Korthax appeared at Molly's side. She is doing well. She is overwhelmed. Molly could read her mother's body language even from across the deck. But she is also lighter. Like a heavy weight is finally being shared. That is the point of coming together. The Red Dragon's voice was gentle. No one should carry the weight of war alone. We were made together in those fires. It is right that we gathered to remember what we survived. A soft chime sounded, and the crowd began to organize itself. They formed a loose circle around a raised platform at the center of the deck. Korthax offered Linda his arm as she walked to the platform. She took it without pause, leaning on him instead of her cane. Together they climbed the short stairs. From up there, Linda could see everyone who had gathered. Former soldiers of every species, their faces lined by age and marked by experience, but their eyes still bright with the memory of what they had done together. I do not know what to say. Her voice was barely a whisper, but speakers carried it so everyone could hear. I spent 30 years hiding from this moment. 30 years avoiding the faces of people I failed. You never failed us. The voice came from somewhere in the crowd, but others quickly joined in. Never. She brought us home. She gave us something to believe in. Linda held up a hand, and silence fell. I failed the 253 soldiers who did not come home. Her voice was steady now, growing stronger. I failed them every time I made a choice that cost lives. I failed them when I survived, and they did not. She paused, and Molly saw her mother's back straighten. The commander was coming out from behind 30 years of hiding. But I also failed myself. I failed by thinking I could escape what happened by running from it. I failed by believing that being alone was the same as healing. I failed by forgetting that I was not the only one carrying this weight. She turned slowly, meeting as many eyes as she could. Today, standing here with all of you, I remember what I forgot. We were never meant to carry this alone. We were made together in the fires of Ashfall, and together is how we were meant to heal. The mark we share is not just a symbol of what we survived. It is a promise we made to each other. A promise that we would never abandon our brothers and sisters, no matter what they look like or where they come from. Vexera stepped onto the platform beside Linda. We gathered today to remember those who fell at Ashfall and all the battles before it. We gathered to honor their sacrifice and to promise again to protect the peace they died for. One by one, other veterans joined them on the platform. Korthax, Brennick, Selena, Torvax, Katie Daniels, and dozens more whose names Molly did not know but whose loyalty was clear on their faces. We read the names now. Korthax's voice rumbled through the observation deck. Every soldier who wore the mark of the seventh and did not live to see this day. He began to say names. Human names, Draconari names, names from species Molly had never heard of. Each one was spoken with respect. Each one was followed by a moment of silence. The list went on for a long time. When it was finally done, everyone raised their right arm, showing their marks to the stars. "We remember," they said together. Voices from a dozen different species joining as one. "We honor." "We carry their fire." Linda's voice joined theirs. And Molly saw something in her mother's face that she had never seen before. Peace. Real. Deep peace. After the ceremony ended, the gathering broke into smaller groups talking and remembering. Food and drinks appeared from somewhere, and the mood slowly changed from sad remembrance to celebration of being alive. Molly found herself surrounded by veteran after veteran, each one eager to tell a story about her mother. Tales of impossible wins, of quiet moments of humanity in the middle of chaos, of a leader who saw soldiers instead of species. She kept us alive by making us better than we thought we could be, a floating creature told her, his many arms waving with feeling. Before the Seventh Fleet, I had never fought beside humans. I thought your kind was weak. Linda showed me how wrong I was. When I was hurt at Korik Station, Kitty Daniels added, she carried me 3 miles through enemy territory to safety. She would not leave anyone behind. As the evening went on, Molly finally found a moment alone with her mother near the glass wall of the observation deck. Linda was staring out at the stars, her face peaceful but thoughtful. "Thank you," Linda said without turning around, "for bringing them to me, for not letting me stay hidden forever. I did not do anything. They found us by accident. There are no accidents." Linda finally looked at her daughter, and her eyes were wet but clear. "I spent 30 years thinking I was protecting you by keeping my past secret. Now I see I was also protecting myself, hiding from the parts of me I thought were too damaged to share." She reached out and took Molly's hand. "I am still going to have nightmares. I am still going to wake up some mornings feeling the weight of everyone I lost. But now I know I am not alone. I know there are others who understand, who carry the same pain, who found a way to keep living. Does this mean you will stay in touch with them?" Torvax invited me to visit his clinic. Linda's smile was small but real. "He says it is never too late to start healing. I think I might go." Across the deck, Corthax caught Linda's eye and raised his glass in a silent toast. She nodded back, and something passed between them that needed no words. "There is one thing I want you to understand, Molly." Linda held her daughter's hand tighter. "Everything I did during the war, every battle I won, every soldier I saved, it all led to this moment. It all led to you. You are the reason I survived. The thought of a future, the chance of a family, even before I knew you would exist. The future is what I was fighting for, and you are the best version of that future I could have dreamed of." Molly hugged her mother, careful of her fragile body but fierce in her love. "I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. More than I can ever say." They stood together watching the stars, surrounded by veterans of a war that had ended 30 years ago, but whose effects were still shaping the galaxy. When Linda Harper returned to the cosmic beam the next morning, she brought friends with her. Corthax helped clean the storage room. Vexor had charmed the dock workers who came in for coffee. Brennick told customers stories of distant worlds while Selena taught Molly the right way to make Draconari. Word spread quickly through the station about the dragon veterans who had adopted the little diner. Business grew as curious beings came to see what was happening, only to be welcomed by a gray-haired human woman with fierce eyes and a warm smile. The cosmic beam became something more than just a place to eat. It became a symbol of the unity that had won the Great War, a reminder that beings of every species could find common ground over shared food and shared stories. And at the center of it all was Linda Harper, finally at peace with who she had been and who she had become. The fires of Ashfall had made her a commander. The love of her daughter had made her something greater. She was simply human. And that was more than enough.